Thanks to Aura for sponsoring a portion of this video.
John, please. I don't like it when we fight.
Listen, I know this is cliched, but it's not you, it's me. You're still good at, some things.
Please listen.
But this just does more for me right now. I'm
John.
sorry, it's how I feel.
I've changed. I can be better used. With an external monitor.
I feel the divide between you and I, like the distance between us.
Fine. One more chance.
Thank you. You won't regret this. I love you.
So my, let's call it relationship with the iPad has been complicated. I think when it first came out, like everybody, I'm like, that's a big phone. I don't need that. And then when they forked the OS and got iPadOS, I'm like, this is it. This is finally the path to make the iPad be a PC replacement. And then iPadOS is just a giant phone OS with a different name. But now that Apple's taken the wraps off iPadOS 16 this year's WWDC, I am more excited about the iPad than I have ever been, as we're finally starting to see it transition to its full potential. It's like you can see it like you're looking at your kid finally do that thing you knew they could always do. But is it finally there? Or are we still waiting for the M2 iPad Pro to finally take us to that next level? So, big caveat here. iPadOS 16 is not out to general public yet as of the making of this video. And I do think I need to bring up and talk about the new changes that are coming to iPadOS with iPadOS 16, and ultimately how that's going to affect this particular M1 iPad Pro. So when it comes to the iPad, at least to me, it's always been the story of software not living up to just the baller hardware that is there. But with iPadOS 16, it sort of makes me look at how I interact with it very differently. And sort of how I've interacted with the M1 iPad Pro this entire year has been more or less the same as I use every other iPad. Didn't matter really what processor was in it. I use it to answer emails and write emails. I write scripts and notes on it and videos on FaceTime with friends and family. But primarily it's a media consumption device. That's mostly what I'm using it for. I'm laying in bed watching Obi-Wan or The Boys, whatever else I want to watch on YouTube to kind of wind down at the end of the day. And while it's been amazing for all of those things, it's never really been what I think it always wanted to be, what Apple tried to make it be, more of a computer. So Apple announced Stage Manager, which gives sort of a little more of a traditional Mac OS feel. And so they also added more support for external monitors. Although even just the idea of docking an iPad to a monitor still seems just internally weird to me. But I do think that we're finally getting much closer to the software living up to the hardware. And because of the fact that there's an M1 chip inside of this thing, it's nuts. The iPad was never slow the year before, and it wasn't slow the year before that, but Apple keeps upgrading the internals, at least making me believe to let us do more with it, and I kind of feel like they're finally starting to take positive steps towards that. Previous years, it was just speed for speed's sake. The iPad never seemed slow, but now it's 80 times faster, and you're like, okay, Twitter launches fast on it, or YouTube launches quickly, or Obi-Wan looks great, but it would have done the exact same stuff on a 2-year-old iPad Pro. And listen, even with the rumors of this M2 iPad Pro coming, MagSafe charging, glass back, whatever else they do, sort of the upgrades they're going to flash in front of you at the keynote, there's nothing that this M1 iPad Pro won't be able to do to run from iPadOS 16 that the M2 iPad Pro will be able to do, just from a software standpoint. Especially if you're taking iPadOS 16 out of the equation right now, because technically it's not out yet. What we have with iPadOS 15. The M1 iPad Pro, as it stands right now, is almost too powerful for its own good. But that's not to say it's perfect, even if we're adding in iPadOS 16 to the conversation. All right, so that's the future. But since the M1 iPad Pro came, in all honesty, I have noticed almost no difference from the previous generation iPad Pro on how I use it. Everything I do works just the same. I'm not that impressed that when I'm on a FaceTime call and I move, the camera moves with me. It's fine. I don't generally think about it. I'm also not using my iPad as a replacement for a PC. sort of things like Files app and sort of a lot of apps that I use are still better, at least as of now, in a desktop environment. So I'm still very much using both for different purposes. When I need to reply to emails or I need to do some more work stuff, it's fine and it works. But for the most part, I don't know as much of a difference. Save for watching HDR content on the mini LED display. That is very noticeable and looks very incredible. But again, the last year's screen was still pretty good. Battery life has still been incredible for me. I still love the way this thing feels, the way it performs. I think software is holding it back from its max potential, but I guess I can't be mad at it. I knew what it was and what it did when I bought it. And for those things, especially on the consumption side of stuff, I mean, the iPad is still just an absolute beast of a computer. Just hold on, let me just check my sleep from last night. It's pretty good. I was only up 3 times. For me, that's a win. So like, before I had kids, I was somebody who always had sleep issues, and I just wanted to sleep just so I could feel rested, like selfishly, just to feel better. Now that I have a family, now that I have kids, and people are relying on me, I take my health a lot more seriously than I did before. And being able to have empirical data about my health from Oura Ring has fundamentally changed my approach to a lot of things. And really, something that's been on my finger for, I feel like 2 years. This is Oura Ring. Specifically, it is the Oura Ring Generation 3. At this point, it's become ubiquitous, at least for me and a lot of creators. I use it for sleep tracking. I'm somebody who's been stupid vocal about having insomnia, and being able to get data on my sleep has been absolutely incredible. So being able to see how long I was awake, what my deep sleep was, has been awesome to see and have. And I've talked about that a lot in videos. But Father's Day is coming up. You might be thinking gifts to get your dad, or maybe your dad, and want to drop some hints for what your wife and kids should get you. Battery life is awesome. The Ring is awesome. It is probably my favorite piece of tech that I have bought or owned really over the past 5 years. It has really changed my behavior and in a lot of ways changed my life. So if you want to learn more about Oura Ring, check it out. Make it a killer Father's Day gift or something for yourself. I'll put all the links down below. I'm still on the hill that I'm bummed it doesn't have pro apps, things like Final Cut and Motion, but I get that I'm probably in my own head on that most people probably don't care, aren't making their livelihood on video editing apps. But personally, I would still love for that to be there. Although in all honesty, now I'm not holding my breath for it. For me, pro apps is a new high res display. I'm gonna be out there with my umbrella saying it's gonna rain today and we're gonna get it this year. In 1 year, it's gonna rain, I'm gonna look like a genius. So I do still think it's coming, but just head scratcher as to when. So one thing that has changed a little bit over the year that I started using the iPad more with is actually xCloud. So I've started using it to sort of do cloud gaming on as a display for that. That's been awesome. Being able to take my Xbox games with me anywhere I am is still incredible and seems like the future. And in no way is that unique to the M1 iPad. But it's I've changed how I've used the iPad. I'm using it more. I love that that's a thing. That sort of gets me so excited for technology. But using the iPad is just a window to the internet. It is still as good, still as great, and this past update, the M1 update, is still kind of forgettable. Listen, iPad 16 is obviously going to evolve as it gets better and as their betas come out, features get released, and I imagine when the M2 iPad comes, we'll probably see more features get added. But I don't think even with the current version of iPadOS 16 that it is a PC replacement for a lot of people. But for those that can live within its constraints, that just need to reply to emails, watch videos, don't need a full-fleshed out sort of file system, then yeah, I think for college students or professionals who just want to be able to take something light and easy with them on the go, it still works for that. But it's also still a far cry from a desktop OS. So, honestly, my opinions from when it first came out are still pretty valid today. It's great at what it does. Battery life is still awesome. I haven't dropped it or anything to have to worry about durability or anything like that. It's held up great. It's held up well. It's as fast now as it was when I first got it. It's great, it's an iPad. Like, you know exactly what you're getting, and thus far there have been no surprises when it comes to the iPad. So if you want a device that is not going to overwhelm you with crazy pro features, but is going to do the things that it does really incredibly well, the M1 iPad Pro is still an awesome choice. If you're the kind of person that's like, ooh, them rumors seem pretty juicy, I want MagSafe charging, I wanna see what comes next, I wanna see if M2 brings pro apps maybe exclusively to it, then at this point, just wait. Or find a great discount on an M1 iPad Pro. I love it, I'm still happy that I bought it, but if I didn't do this for a job, I would have been very happy with my now 2-year-old iPad Pro instead.